Rain of Troy hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your rant line, rave line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there? Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain it what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it.
Let's open up that race line. Woohoo! Oh, I can't believe USC is 7-5 again. Oh no!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant of Troy Radio, episode 522, coming to you on Tuesday, November 21st. We're going to look back at USC's loss to UCLA, talk about the fallout from it, and so much more. Here on this episode, as always, you can follow us on Twitter at Rant of Troy. Give us a call on our phone number, 818-643-7227, Second Woodsboro and Show. Our email address is rantoftroy@fanside.com. I'm your host, Mike Garcia, joined along with my co-host in the Rant of Troy studio in Los Angeles, Alicia D'Artola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We are back a day late, but I don't think that's a bad thing. It's, this is going to be a one-episode week. It's a holiday week. The season's over. You know.
One more day to process what happened on Saturday, which maybe I didn't need, but also I was sick over the weekend, so I don't know that I processed very much on Saturday or Sunday or most of Monday. So yeah,
here we are on a Tuesday, a day in which the new college football playoff rankings are out, and Alicia, SC is not ranked.
No, SC is not ranked, but Washington is in the top 4, as they should be.
Yeah,
so
number 4.
That's good for them, I suppose.
Oregon is number 6. Florida State drops a spot. Washington moves up after beating Oregon State. Good for the Huskies, honestly. Like they should be in there. Absolutely should be in there. Arizona looming at 15, hoping that Oregon State can win the Civil War up in Oregon and then squeak into the Pac-12 championship game. But alas, SC watching from home because the Trojans could not take care of their own business this year. Finish 7-5.
Yep, like the new intro says.
Oh no! Yeah. So
yeah.
Either way, who you're pulling for in the Pac-12 as it stands right now? By the way,
Oregon State.
Oregon State can't win it, but they can wreak havoc.
Yeah, that's what I'm pulling for.
Yeah.
I'm pulling for. I shouldn't because I don't know. I don't know. It's very difficult because I don't have the SEC mindset of like it's good that USC's rivals are stronger and thus have better recruiting and all of that kind of stuff. Like part of me wants the Pac-12 to do the very Pac-12 thing of imploding and cannibalizing itself, which it's already sort of, moved towards this year for sure. I wouldn't mind seeing it in this final week. But if I have to choose between Washington and Oregon, I'll go with Washington. I've been a huge fan of Kalen DeBoer, so I am on board with Washington winning the Pac-12 if anybody's got to do it. But also, is Arizona still alive in this?
Yeah, if Oregon State wins, Arizona goes to the Pac-12 championship game. I believe. I think there's a weird tiebreaker scenario, but I think it leans Arizona. Kenny in the chat is pulling for UW. Artist formerly known as Jabroni Jabber Brody says, "Can I say Oregon? I think they could beat Georgia. I think Oregon pound for pound might be the best team. But either way, I think it's going to be fun to see how it all goes and finishes if Arizona ultimately gets to the Pac-12 championship game, that might be one of the best storylines because they would be the ultimate sleeper pick.
Yeah.
And you can be a sleeper pick too, because USC fans, have you heard of Sleeper Daily Fantasy? Sleeper hosts daily fantasy prop games that you can compete for a chance to win big cash prizes. The game is simple. For each contest, you're given a pool of props for upcoming games across different sports. You pick whether each prop will be over or under given the total. You can choose up to 8 different props for a chance at a bigger win. If you want to join in on the action, we've got you covered. Sign up with our promo code FANSIDED2 today and receive a bonus match of up to $100 using the code FANSIDED2, FANSIDED2, FANSIDED, and the number 2. When signing up, not only gives you this great reward, but it helps directly support the podcast. So make sure you get your phone out, take a little picture of the QR code that's over on the screen, or make sure to use the code FANSIDED2 when you sign up. The offer only available to new customers who are 18 plus and physically present in valid states. Please remember to always game responsibly and check the episode description for the full terms of the offer. Alicia, we got a bunch to get to, though. Let's get to the news, shall we? All right, let's start with the update on the defensive coordinator search from our buddy Shotgun Spratling over at USCFootball.com. Quoted Lincoln Riley from Trojans Live on Monday night. Quote, "This is USC. You're going to have the chance to go and hire just about anybody that you want. We want people who have a proven track record and people who have done this at a high level and have shown a consistent level of excellence." Alicia, I know people are out on Lincoln Riley press conferences and Lincoln Riley quotes and all those things, but he's saying the right thing here, right? Like this is what you want to hear.
I mean, this is all coach speak too.
Sure,
It's just sort of scratching the itch that you want to hear. I think the health of the program really does depend on what USC does here. Does USC go back to its old ways of just sort of falling on the familiar, or does USC swing for the fences the way it did with Lincoln Riley? And I think that there are names being thrown about right now that would suggest that USC is that USC as a program, as an athletic department headed by Jen Cohen, is continuing forward with the same mindset that we saw was turned around at USC under Mike Sosna / Mike Bone / Brandon Sosna.
I was going to say, who's Mike Sosna?
Yeah. Mike Bone / Brandon Sosna.
Yeah.
That took a hiring process very, very seriously and didn't count USC out of anybody. So I think that we need to see who USC is able to get on the line, but the names that are out there right now are rather encouraging, I would say, because I wouldn't have gone into the DC search expecting at least one of the names that has been heavily rumored to even take a call from USC. So
yeah. Let's get into that a little bit here. Ryan Kartry of the LA Times tweeted that a lot of rumors flying around USC's pursuit of a defensive coordinator. Don't be surprised if the search extends into next week. It's a holiday week, plus plenty of DC options are still coaching for the respective teams this weekend. Kartry didn't go into any specifics there, but I think it's obvious of guys who are coaching currently. Anybody who currently has the defensive coordinator job, like one of the guys that we've talked about a lot that I personally think would be a great candidate, Trent Bray over at Oregon State. He has a game this week, right? I know people have talked about like Morgan Scalley. He has a game this week. Anybody like
Dave Aranda.
Dave Aranda has a game this week. Manny Diaz has a game this week. There's a bunch of dudes.
Who's the Indiana Tom Allen?
Yeah, most coaches who have a job have a game this week. So more than likely, it was always going to be until next week. However, there was a tweet from Ryan Phillips of The Big Lead that says, I just had it right here. USC plans to have a defensive coordinator in place by the end of the week at the latest. Significant staff shakeup coming as well. To which Jason Shearer of Wildcat Authority said, "Yep, just got a text from my guy Leonard and Collins, the leader in the clubhouse." So I don't know how much to how much stock to put on all of this. It's all rumor mill kind of stuff here. We've not gotten any specifics about who's exactly interviewed, who's exactly done this, who's exactly done that. But Leonard, meaning Jim Leonard, the former defensive coordinator over at Wisconsin, go Badgers, and Collins, meaning Jeff Collins, the former head coach at Georgia Tech. He was previously the defensive coordinator at Florida, and before that, Mississippi State. Those are two guys that have been, mentioned here by Jason Shearer. But like, what goes through your mind right now?
I like that USC is being linked to Jim Leonard.
Yeah.
I like that the rumor mill is swirling about Jim Leonard, and I also like, and this is going to be sort of incongruous. Like, I like that there isn't a lot of chatter about USC's defensive core. Like, we said as we were putting together the rundown, let's go through and find, whatever tweets we can find from people with some semblance of credibility. Jason Shearer is not connected to USC, but he was on everything that was happening with the Pac-12 and the Big 12 and everything like that. So, he's got sources, and Ryan Karchi has sources, and all of these kinds of things. Try and find any of the chatter, and let's see what we can sort of throw together.
Right.
And there isn't a lot of chatter. There really isn't a lot of like chatter in front of you. But the chatter that is there is all centered, I think, around the few names that we've heard, the Jim Leonard and the Jeff Collins. And to be frank, both of those would be solid. I mean, Jim Leonard would be a huge statement making hire, because he is one of the top names on the market. Like, this was a guy that the Green Bay Packers were trying to get to come be their defensive coordinator a couple of years ago. So,
yeah.
And Jeff Collins is, I mean, realistically could be this year's Manny Diaz. The failed head coach route after being a strong defensive coordinator. Jeff Collins clearly not a good head coach, but he was a very, very good defensive coordinator in the SEC and elsewhere for a long time. So a reclamation project in that sense, but one that I always like going after the failed head coaches, a la like Dave Aranda, or you look at like Zach Arnett, because you don't get most people don't get promoted to a head coaching position unless they've done really good things as a coordinator first. So those are the names that are being thrown out there, and those are serious candidates that USC is looking at. USC has been, rumored around a guy to be talking or trying to pursue a guy like Morgan Scalley, he's got a problematic background, but also he's one of the best defensive coordinators in the country and has been for a while. And that is the kind of target that maybe not the individual I want USC to target, but the kind of profile that I want USC to be looking at.
It's the football profile.
Yes.
Yes. So we talked about it before. I don't think SC should go after Morgan Scalley because of the off-field stuff. I don't know. Maybe that's a little too pearl clutchy. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. But like, if you are going to go gauge Morgan Scalley, which what I read about the Morgan Scalley rumors is just that USC went and gauged the interest, which if you're going to go gauge Morgan Scalley's interest, I think you've also, maybe USC actually did gauge Pete Kwiatkowski's interest. Maybe they did go gauge, other sitting and effective and respected DCs that are out there to make a quote unquote lateral move and see what USC can because it's not like the names here are Ed Ogeron. or
No.
Clancy Pendergast
And
or
it's not even
L-
with
it's-
literally all due respect, because I love the guy. It's not like D'Anton Lynn kind of
Yeah.
names. It's what Lincoln Riley talked about is the proven track record and the consistent high level and all of that kind of stuff. Like USC isn't being linked to hot shot, potentially flash in the pan kind of DCs.
I would say though, Jim Leonard is very much in the D'Anton Lynn profile. With the difference being that Jim Leonard was around at Wisconsin, for a few years.
Oh, if D'Anton Lynn was a couple years down the line into his defensive coordinator experience, I would be all over that.
If D'Anton Lynn was at UCLA for like 3-4 years, he would essentially be Jim Leonard. Yeah.
And I would be screaming from the rooftops if he was able to replicate his success over that 3-year period.
Yeah.
To be after him. And frankly, if USC ended up with him as the defensive coordinator, I think there are names that would excite me less, I suppose is what I would say.
I mean, I think that either way, I think you want someone who is competent. You want someone who checks as many boxes as you can. We talked about our criteria last week. All those things that you want someone who has a reputation for developing guys, someone with experience in a top defense, ideally someone who's done it at multiple stops, etc. And these names are dudes that check a lot of those boxes. And I think that is encouraging. And I think it would work towards dispelling sort of the narrative that Lincoln Riley doesn't care about defense. Well, you know how you prove that you do care about defense? You go out there and you hire a guy that everybody wants. Jim Leonard is a guy that people wanted last year, and he I won't say took a sabbatical, but he basically took a sabbatical by being just an analyst for his buddy Brett Bielema in Illinois this year, right? Like, he's not a defensive coordinator. He didn't take a head coaching job. And he is one of the most sought after guys in America in the DC ranks. So yeah, I think this is a step in the right direction. We'll see what the final outcome is as things go on, whether it's something that we figure out before Thanksgiving or after. It'll be interesting. Peter in the chat says next week at the latest, because you don't want this to run into the portal. Yeah.
Yes.
Ideally sooner than later. But if it's someone who's coaching right now this week, then you've got to wait and look no different than 2 years ago when SC had to wait for Lincoln Riley.
Yeah. Here's I guess how I would frame it. If it's Jim Leonard, I think there's a strong argument to say if he's ready to go now, go now. But I also think I don't know why Jim Leonard would pull the trigger on that this early. If he might be like, why wouldn't he potentially get a look or get a shot at head coach openings that open up after this coming weekend? So if today Jim Leonard said, I want to be the defensive coordinator at USC, I'd be say, yeah, go ahead and do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't make a Jeff Collins hire right now. I would wait until the weekend and see how the weekend shakes out. And
the problem is the recruiting stuff, though.
It is. But
I know the most important thing is to get the hire right. So to your point, like, you do want to get the hire right.
I'm not necessarily saying you have to, like, you might have to exclude guys who are involved in conference title games by saying we will not wait 2 weeks. But I think you can wait this weekend and still have that run into the to signing day, and still have enough time and say that patience was a virtue there. What I'm saying is that I know there was a lot of chatter early in this week, I had a feeling that, like, if something didn't happen in the first 2 days of this week, then that might be a bad sign. I no longer feel that way. The more I think about it, the more I look at the timing, the more I look at the candidate pool.
What changed your mind?
Number one, thinking about what's the best case scenario for this week, it would be to hire Jim Leonard and what Jim Leonard's timeline might be. And I couldn't piece into my head why, if you are Jim Leonard, you would agree to be USC's defensive coordinator on November 21st, if by November 28th, you are getting calls about being a head coach.
Yeah.
And number two, thinking about guys like Trent Bray and guys like Manny Diaz and guys like Dave Aranda and gauging their interest, specifically because I was thinking like, okay, what if it is just Jeff Collins? Like, if it is just Jeff Collins, wait and find out if Dave Aranda becomes available before you make that decision.
Yeah, like
the way I
yes, I'm with you because I don't think your options should solely be dudes that are available right now today.
Yeah.
You know? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Want to give a big thank you to Alex for the super
Alex.
chat. Alex coming in the clutch as always. You're the best. Touchdown USC says you need a DC with a solid Rolodex. Yes.
That's a very good point too, because this is the thing. Your head coach is only as good as their coordinators. Your coordinators are only as good as their staff.
Yeah.
And you need a good staff. So
yeah. And if Lincoln Riley is going to be the head coach that has the most purview over the offense and delegate the defense basically entirely, then you need that defensive coordinator to be able to have the power and the ability to go out and duplicate their hire by hiring all the staff underneath them. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Ryan in the chat says, Leonard is a safe hire, but he did inherit 20 years of success at Wisconsin. Defensively, a conference known for a lack of offensive proficiency. Yes, I think that this is a concern about Jim Leonard. One of the things that we talked about when we talked about criteria, one of the important aspects of the things that we'd love to have, like not necessarily a need to have, but a love to have aspect is you want to see success at multiple stops because it kind of takes away the idea of inheriting something, starting on third base kind of deal, right? I think you can make the argument that every defensive coordinator that Wisconsin has had over the last couple decades has been great. Justin Wilcox was there for a year and was great. Dave Aranda was great there. Jim Leonard has been great there. Like, I think the success of Dave Aranda and Justin Wilcox elsewhere as DCs kind of works to dispel the notion that Jim Leonard is just completely propped up by a good situation. But I understand the hesitancy there. I also think that I swear the more I think about it, the older I get, and the more I think about like the national statistics, I think that we need to look at things from a conference perspective and isolate those things. So earlier today, I went in terms of total defense in the Big Ten against conference opponents only. So yes, Ryan's right. The Big Ten is not known for offensive proficiency. We can talk about the physicality of Michigan and Ohio State, but at the same time, there's an Iowa in the conference that is content with winning games 9-6 if they can, right? And they're totally fine with that. Well, so let's sort the Big Ten conference leaders in conference games only. So you're only playing the same teams. And if you do that, in 2021, for instance, Wisconsin, yards per play allowed, number one in the conference in conference play alone at 4.23, a full half yard under Penn State, half yard less per play than the number two team, which is Penn State. 2022, the year that Paul Chryst gets fired, Wisconsin in that stat is fifth in the conference at 4.91, a half yard behind Iowa, who's number one. So, yeah, I think there was a slight step back last year for Wisconsin, but you look at 2021, 2022, Wisconsin was second. So, yeah, I think
in terms of scoring defense, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 6 years of Jim Leonard as the defensive coordinator. 3 of the 6 years they were top 2 in scoring defense in the Big 12, in the Big 10 against Big 10 opposition.
Yeah.
And I'll also add too that USC is going to be in the Big 10 next year. Like,
Yeah. So
knowing the Big Ten, it would be a big help as well.
yeah, 100%. Jeff says, I just hope that Jen Cohen is a part of the process, the person that retained Grinch for 6 years after not accomplishing anything good and after regressing does not inspire confidence. Yeah, I don't know that we know too much about the whole process. But also I think the best scenario is that I understand. I think I agree. I think that Jen Cohen should be involved. I think that there should be whoever Jen Cohen's Brandon Sosna is should be involved. At the same time, I think you also want Lincoln Riley to be able to recognize his mistakes in the past and be able to learn from those and make the hire himself, right? Like the worst case scenario, and mind you, I guess this isn't the worst case scenario because let's just say that Jen Cohen's the one standing here and saying hire Jim Leonard, and Lincoln Riley is like, I was thinking of hiring Clancy Pendergast. Like, let's say that that's the scenario. Well, at least you have Jim or Jen Cohen there to aim him in the right direction. But I think that the best case scenario is that Lincoln Riley has come to the conclusion that no, I need to hire Jim Leonard or a Jim Leonard level coach because I made this mistake. I saw that this didn't work. And now I'm correcting those things because that shows development, right?
Yeah. I mean, and you have to give him room to grow and learn and change and understand where he put his foot wrong before and what he needs to do now. Like, you have to give him that opportunity because he's your head coach for the foreseeable future and you believe in him at the very least as an offensive mind.
Yeah.
You gotta see. Like, it's
yeah.
I've said it before, but you have much bigger problems if Jen Cohen has to come in and dictate who the coordinator is.
Yeah. 100%. Jeff in the chat says, I like to see Leonard stats against Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan, not the Big Ten West bottom feeders. I just pulled up Ohio State's statistics really quick. We can look into this further, especially if Jim Leonard ends up being the guy.
If he gets hired, we're gonna do.
But just a quick cursory glance, Wisconsin has not played Ohio State much. Ohio State in 2022 dropped 52 on Wisconsin. That's also the year that Paul Chryst gets fired. And that was the most recent year that Jim Leonard was there. They had 7.7 yards per play, which is not good. In 2019, Ohio State is held by Wisconsin to 5.99 yards per play, which was the second lowest of the season. It was only Wisconsin and Penn State that held Ohio State to under 6 yards per play. And Wisconsin, or Ohio State still somehow scored 38 points in that game. So, yeah, we will analyze those numbers more as we go on, especially if Leonard ends up being that guy. But we will see. Alicia, let's talk about USC and UCLA, the Trojans. I know. This is
you have to.
It's the SC UCLA Fallout episode. We got to. Trojans lose 38-20, a game in which I think that I always like to think, does the score represent what happened? Does it for you? Because I think that it's yes and no at the same time.
I think it does, more or less.
It was just one of those games where, like, simultaneously, I feel like SC was blown out, but also not at the same time, or because you have the fumble, like, and in that case, 18 points and 38-20 sort of makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's The game felt closer than 18 points in that it felt like USC was on the verge of getting back into it for long stretches, and then it blew open, and then it was just like, okay, well, that's that.
But it also felt like they were down 50 at one point.
Yeah. So again,
Yeah.
it's.
I thought the best comparison, it ended up being a lot like the Notre Dame game, which was very similar in terms of, what the score looked like and what it felt like, right? But I thought one of the best comparisons was from our friend Trent, who said that this was kind of like the 2017 Cotton Bowl. And
Yeah, that's a perfect
I think there's a lot of
example.
comparisons because the 2017 Cotton Bowl, SC loses that game. Was it 24-7? I think that is a game SC loses by 17 points. In most instances, that's not a winnable game. But how the game went, SC was competitive to the point that they should have been more competitive, but they also weren't remotely competitive because they were losing the line of scrimmage on every single play. To the point where you sit there and you go, also they had no chance in this game, and it's like simultaneously that both of those things sort of exist, and I think that part of the reason that you end up in that situation is there's a defensive touchdown that kind of adds some points there, like.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example. Whether it's like a defensive touchdown or a special teams touchdown or a just a
It can provide separation,
an explosive play on offense that just comes out of nowhere, and suddenly you're right there, and that's sort of what I was getting at, is that USC was substantively blown out while also preventing it from being a true, pasting.
Right, like
true jiggle bagging, as it were.
It was, but it was sort of a jiggle bagging. Like they were down 38-13 at one point.
Substantively, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like the product on the field. UCLA was this much better than USC in this game. From start to finish. This was not a fluke. On a play-by-play basis, UCLA was better than USC in this game.
I think we can sit here and talk about the areas of where, like, if SC was going to be able to be put in a place to have a better outing in this game, I think there's a pathway there. It's finishing off your drives in the red zone, which SC did not do. Mm-hmm. If they finish off those drives with touchdowns, and if they don't turn the ball over, this game is a completely different story. But that is the story of the game, and they did do those things. And when you do those things, you're not going to win games. Mm-hmm. And it more often than not ends up in a position to where you can't overcome those things, because this wasn't like the Cal game where Cal turned the ball over 4 times and SC, still won, but Cal had the chance to win. SC turned over the ball a bunch of times, but that prevented their ability from truly competing in this game to the best ability that they could have. Because I think SC could have won this game even despite losing the line of scrimmage, had they finished off their drives, had they played cleanly, and they'd done all those things, it would have still been a difficult, ugly, close game that wouldn't have been satisfying to anybody.
It could have been Arizona.
It could have been Arizona.
A game
sure.
where USC lost the battle in the trenches, certainly offensively.
Yes.
But by the sheer will of
we talked about before.
Playmaking.
We talked about in the CardCast, this could have been the Utah game.
Yeah. If
to a T.
Yeah, in terms of USC overcoming the fact that
they were outplayed on the line. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because Caleb Williams and your skill position talent theoretically give you that opportunity.
Yes, but
the problem
didn't happen.
Caleb Williams throws an interception, Marshawn Lloyd fumbles the ball,
right.
Brendan Rice fumbles the ball, and you have all of the red zone stuff and everything like that. So it's a game that's within USC's reach, but only by the sheer bailout ability of the star players on offense. when you lose the game, and this is the issue of this entire season, right? The difference between this season and last season is that when USC was in the positions where the defense wasn't able to get stops and the game was put on the knife's edge of whether or not Caleb saves you or your run game saves you or whatever it is, they felt this way, one way in 2022, and they felt the completely opposite way in 2023 because USC has games where they commit 3+ turnovers and lose to their rivals by double-digit points.
The turnovers did not go in their way. And I think the overall like flat effort, lack of effort that we saw in this game plays a big role in that. And SC couldn't overcome those things. And it was a sign of, I think it's a sign of coaching on both sides of the ball. SC could not get the key stops when they absolutely needed those to be there. And they could not absolutely get the key red zone scores when they needed those. And in a game in which you're getting outplayed on the lines, you need to come through in every little crucial moment. And they could not do those. Before we get to over under, we got rants to play, but also want to get to another super chat from Alex. Thank you.
Cheers.
That says LR Lincoln Riley is really smart. Smart people learn from their mistakes. Lincoln Riley will make the right hire this time. I think that's the hope from the SC perspective, 100%. Will that be the case? We're gonna have to see.
I'm with Alex here. If it turns out that Lincoln Riley is a fraud and all of that, whatever that people have been, I think, overreacting this week, then the proof of that will not have been this year. It will have been the future years that prove that. To me, this is a bad year for him. That should be a learning and growing year, and to write off the program or write off the coach or write off anything after a 7-5 season, I just think is pure madness. I think you have to give him the opportunity to go out and hire a new defensive coordinator and get the defense right and give him time to get the offensive line right and the offense to sort of be the whole roster. USC tried a big roster flip. They flipped the roster. It doesn't always work exactly the way that you hope in flipping the roster. And you got to settle in and build a program. And that's one of the things that I think I'm on board with is I am tired of coaching hires. I am tired of the circus around USC. I am ready for somebody to come in and be given the time to build a program because they deserve that time. My issue with Clay Helton is that he was given time to build a program when he should have never been hired in the first place. USC made the correct hire. Now let that hire build a program.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think the thing here is, SC tried to build this team, especially on defense, through the transfer portal. And I understand the hesitancy that people have over that. But go look at what Oregon's defense is. Go look at what UCLA's defense is. Two teams that really gave SC fits defensively the last 2 weeks, right? Those defenses are built through the transfer portal. Oregon had 6 of their 11 starters against ASU on defense were from the transfer portal. UCLA's like practically their entire defense is from the transfer portal. Leatu Latu from Washington, the Murphy brothers from North Texas. Like the list goes on, right? Like they're key players, all from the transfer portal. So I think SC could have nailed it absolutely from the transfer portal, especially when you look at they did that on offense, right? Like especially last year, they did that on offense. Why couldn't they have done that on defense? I think they could have if the coaching was better, if the scheme was better, if the play calling was better, if the weekly preparation was better, if all those things were better. I don't think it's the transfer portal that is the problem. It was the coaching that was the problem, which I think is sort of the encouraging thing going forward, because that means that the transfer portal is still an option to success. Like it's still a pathway forward. You can still, build your defense, through the transfer portal and through homegrown recruiting. You want to ideally do both of those things, especially since you got to recruit on 3 fronts now. It's no longer a 1-front recruiting, war. It's a 3 fronts. You're recruiting your own guys to stay. You're recruiting your recruits, your high school recruits, and you're recruiting transfers.
Yeah, and you have to do all three of those things capably in order for this to work out.
Yeah.
And you also have to understand that sometimes guys that you think will hit will miss, and you'll be left, with less than you expected, but you got to keep plugging away at it until you get the right fits.
Yeah. Yeah. Ryan in the chat says the offensive line has to be built through the high school ranks. I think so. Yeah.
You can supplement.
I think that's the most difficult spot to get with the transfer portal stuff. Especially, you can't build the entire line through the transfer portal, which is what SC was trying to do last year.
I think what you can do in terms of offensive line, though, that I will be looking to see if USC does this, which is a little bit tough because of the nature of the position, but if you can find offensive linemen who are on the younger side, like I think you can expect to fill a gap with a sort of grad transfer offensive lineman. You can't rebuild your whole offensive line with those kinds of guys. But I would be interested if USC supplements its youthful depth with more guys like Emmanuel Pregnon, who is a young offensive lineman.
Yeah.
Who is
getting transfer guys with term, right?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But that's still, you are still in a process that I agree with the broader point, which is that you need to recruit your offensive line strongly out of the high school ranks and then supplement it with the transfer portal. Where at other positions, other areas of the field, you can literally just grab a bunch of guys from the transfer portal and plug them in and coach them well and have success. Where on the offensive line, it does seem to be an issue of development.
Yeah. Well, also, I think it's important that you want the ideal transfer portal guys you want to get just in general are dudes with term. I think it's great to add an Addison that you can bring in for, plug and play at one spot here and there, a Mekhi Blackman that
you got to get one every year.
That can, come in and be the 1-year guy and plug in a spot where that they can come in and do that thing. But look at UCLA, the Murphy twins, they are multiple year transfers from North Texas. Latu, multiple years, right? And that's what you want to see from Bear Alexander. That's what
Anthony Lucas.
Yeah, Anthony Lucas. Like, I think those are in line with what you want to be able to do.
Trequan Fagans.
Yeah, and now the key is to develop those guys as it goes going forward. So, yeah, we will see. We will see what happens with all of those things. But you guys called in to the Rant Line after USC's lost to UCLA. Here's what you guys had to say.
Hey, Raina Troy, this is LA Fred calling.
This is Tony from Denora, PA.
Greg from DC. Johnny from Tennessee.
This is Spoonie from LA again. Well, you can't blame it on Alice Grinch this time.
I mean, bad play calling, turnovers, penalties. Defense was not good. The offensive line was just atrocious all game. And you guys talked about it all week, how good UCLA defense was. So we could not afford to get off to a slow start. And then we just gave them a short field the whole first quarter.
I don't know whether it's on the players or whether it's on the coaches. The Trojans are not ready to play when they come out of the tunnel for big games.
And if he continues to have these same type of issues on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, he may be on the hot seat.
I'm going to point some of the finger directly at Lincoln Riley, not only for keeping Alex Grinch when he should have been gone last year after the Tulane game, but his offense, the second half of this season, has been horrible.
I don't know if anybody else is going to admit it, but we got rid of Grinch. Now it seems that Lincoln Riley hasn't been playing his part.
Hey, guys. Yeah, Jeff in Copenhagen. Remember what I said earlier on this year that I swear I saw Clay Helton's ghost on the sideline? Well, he has possessed Lincoln Riley. This is a friggin' joke. Absolute joke. Goodbye, Lincoln Riley. Fire him now.
Fire Riley is not ridiculous anymore.
I told you so. Remember I spoke about Lincoln Riley back in the past when I said back in week 7, I said I predicted that USC record was going to wind up 7-5.
I can't believe USC is 7-5 again. Oh no!
Embarrassing.
All of us anticipated big, great things this year, and the air just went out of the balloon on this thing, and it just kept going out, and there was no way to solve it.
We are in trouble now.
I don't have any more to give right now. I need a little break. Hopefully, we all have a good week. Enjoy your Thanksgiving, and fight on, everybody.
Fight on.
Take care. Fight on.
Fight on.
Always love the show. Fight on.
Thanks for the calls, everybody. Alicia, what are your thoughts about the rant line?
When people ask us why we are constantly responding to the Fire Riley chat, I present my evidence.
Yeah.
I will stand by it. I think that the USC fan base is scarred from the Clay Helton era, and it's scarred from too many conversations with Oklahoma fans being forced upon them after the Lincoln Riley hire. I think I empathize completely with being done. This season was not fun. The season was a drain. It was actively the opposite of fun. It sucked. So I get the feelings of just being really out on the whole thing and being down. But I will continue to say that if you think that the solution to put USC on track is to fire Lincoln Riley after 2 seasons, when USC went through 6 years of Clay Helton, a circus of a firing with Steve Sarkisian, a circus of a firing with Lane Kiffin, and you think that USC will be in a better position for having just said, screw it, we're done with the objectively great hire that we made after one bump in the road. I think you are
big bump in the road, though.
I mean, it was a bump in the road. Yeah. I don't think there's any question that it was a bump in the road. Yeah, 100%.
Sinkhole?
One that needs to be responded to.
Yeah.
No, a sinkhole is way worse than 7-5. But it just this reminds me of Lane Kiffin, to be honest, because 2011 was almost too good, and then people expected a ton from 2012, and everything went wrong in 2012, and USC fell flat on its face. And then 2013 rolls around, and Pat Hayden makes, in my opinion, what continues to look like the horrendous decision to prematurely fire Lane Kiffin from a team that went out and showed it was capable of winning 10 games and set the program into a motion of just, catastrophe after catastrophe after catastrophe, instead of recognizing that in the wake of the Pete Carroll era, your new head coach under sanctions was going to need time to build their program and to settle things and to figure things out and everything like that. And by not showing that level of patience with Lane Kiffin, you set USC off on this trajectory. And then USC turns around and is overly patient with Clay Helton, which is super frustrating. But you want to know what a sinkhole is? A sinkhole is 5-7. Which is what USC was in 2018.
Is there that big of a difference between 5-7 and 7-5? I don't think there is.
Yes, there is. There is a massive difference between 5-7 and 7-5.
Well, considering that SC went 1-5 in the last 6 games, and the one win was a 1-point win on the road against a Cal team that had a third-string quarterback,
it was a good
I don't think there's a
time.
big difference.
No, I'm not arguing it was a good time at all. But when you also look at how many of those losses were to top 25 teams? How many of those losses were to top 10 teams?
Sure, right.
I get that you want USC to be, and I'm not the expectations for this season when you have a Heisman winning trophy quarterback on your hand in an offense that's as good as we know that USC's can be. The expectations were reasonable, and we're in a position where 7-5 is a massive failure on that front.
Yeah.
But again, like,
Also,
we're talking levels.
Mark says 1 point and we're 6-6. Yeah, Kenny says 5-7 if Arizona goes for 2. Yeah. Like, you know, 4-8 if Colorado gets the timing right on that last drive.
You can be Lincoln Riley and pull it going the other way and say that USC is how close to being 10-2.
Well, I mean,
if the defense
sure.
gets one stop, if
like,
the you know, all of these what ifs and everything like that. What I'm saying is that
the what ifs go both ways. Sure.
Yes. And what I'm saying is that, like, yes, but what I keep going back to is that USC's defense was literally the worst defense in program history.
Yeah.
The worst defense in program history, and you go 7-5, it doesn't sound so bad anymore. The worst defense in program history should have you being 2-10. Like, but USC has a 41-point offense, and the you know, Caleb Williams and all of this kind of stuff. So when it comes down to it, it was a bad season objectively, but not the kind of season that you can't turn around from and rebuild from and get better. And because people are giving up when they shouldn't be giving up. Like, if you're going to give up after 2 years, then do you want USC to be changed? You want USC to be a Premier League team that you want to be Chelsea that changes managers every 18 months?
Poch is going to work. Okay, so I'm with you. I think that, you know, we talked about it before. This is what happens when you have a coach that doesn't win something in the first 2 years. You fire the coordinators after year 2. And you go from there, and you hope that those changes are the ones that you need. And if I do think that if Lincoln Riley had a great defensive coordinator who was coaching up the defense,
if USC's defense, we said this going into the season, and it proved to be more or less true. If USC's defense was a top 50 defense, USC is probably 10-2 right now.
Yes,
but the defense was the worst defense in the history of the program. No wonder the record was shitty.
Right, but I think the problem is, yes, I think you can make the argument that, you know, it would be easier to sit here and say that if the defense was better, SC would be the Penn State of the Pac-12. That would be easier to buy if that was the case. But if SC had a better defense, the games that you're talking about still being those 2 losses are to Notre Dame and to UCLA, which are not the Oregon and the Washington games. It'd be one thing if it was just you got outclassed by Oregon and Washington, which are top 5 teams, and you were the Penn State, right? Like that would be one thing if that was the case, but that's not the case of where SC was this year, right? Like where SC was they played up and down to their opponent. Like, I think that, you know, one of their best games on offense, if not their best game on offense all season, was against the best opponent that SC played, which was Washington, right?
Yeah.
So they played up to them on offense, but the defense was horrible, atrociously bad, right? They played down to Cal. They played down to Colorado in the second half. They played down to ASU. Like, the problem is that SC played too many close games and didn't exert their will in all those things. And if they had a better defense, I think that they would have been in a position to be able to control games better. And I think we talked about it a million times over. Look at what UCLA did this past year, and that shows that if you get the DC hire right, you can fix a lot of things defensively, and suddenly your game control can be so much better, which UCLA's game control and their season would have been better if they would have had the offense to pair with that defense, and they didn't this year, which is why Chip Kelly's going to get fired, because his offense took a huge step back.
Well, the chatter is maybe going away from that direction.
But their offense took a big step back. I don't think that I think SC's offense this year took a step back when you talk about the offensive line and whatnot. But I don't think that the step back that SC took this year on offense was remotely close to the step back that, say, UCLA did, which I think only further validates how good SC can be if you get the defensive coordinator hire right.
That's
but
even
but that's
even with the offensive
but you
line,
need to do that. You can't
Yeah,
we can't just
yeah.
sit here and say if.
Yes.
It needs to
but
happen.
But that is because this whole conversation got started from the fire Riley sort of
Sure.
situation. People want to just cut ties and fire Riley.
I think it's frustration after losing a rivalry
a
game.
very clear
Yeah.
path forward that doesn't have to involve firing the head coach.
Sure.
It's very simple. Hire a good defensive coordinator.
Right. But I think
and give your offensive line time
Yes.
to develop talent that you had to rebuild. It was the single most untenable position on the field for USC. Was the offensive line, and unfortunately, it's the one that you can't just snap your fingers and fix in the transfer portal. So you have to be patient with your. But even with an offensive line this year that is just not at the level that USC needs to be, they still go out and average 41.8 points.
But I think this is the thing though, is I think so much of the stuff with the Lincoln Riley frustrations, which I think is more than warranted after the UCLA game, is because it's not just isolated to the defense. We can look at the lack of effort against UCLA on both sides of the ball.
Which
we can look at the offensive struggles against UCLA. The two games that SC gets truly just beaten on the scoreline were the two games that the offense played the gigantic role in. Notre Dame and UCLA, the two rivalry games in which they do all those things that plummets their ability to compete in those games. Even if the defense wasn't horrible in those games to the point where they could have competed in those games if it wasn't for the turnovers, if it wasn't for not finishing off drives. But those things are there. And that's why I think if we're talking about SC being a national championship winning team, it's more than just fixing the defense. The issue, but the defense is the first major step.
Yes, but I think that people are writing off the program after a season that went south.
Yeah.
And misconstruing a season that turned south for this is what the program is and this is what the program will always be, and there is no fixing those things. Different teams have different compositions, and I'm gonna be honest. I want to see the team put up a better effort than USC put in the UCLA game.
Yeah.
But I also understand psychology, and I also understand that I went into the UCLA game completely and utterly just And so I'm not gonna sit here and say that I am shocked or stunned that a bunch of dudes who just went through the same month of absolute just demoralization couldn't possibly have gone into the UCLA game with that demoralization finally taking root, because they fought against Utah and they fought against Washington and they fought against Oregon and they tried and they lost, and eventually you just hit that wall. And Lincoln Riley has stated that he needs to figure out how to manage a team better in terms of preventing them from hitting that wall. But the fact that they hit that wall should not surprise us, given what happened in this season, given what the expectations were, and all of that. It's just the reality of the situation. It's just the reality of college football. This is the way that things go when you're dealing with teams that are shifting and changing every year because of graduations and new players and all of that kind of stuff. You're constantly juggling different mentalities, and you have to get ones that fit. And it takes time to build a program that is capable of withstanding the downfall of this kind of season.
Yeah. All right, let's get to over-under. We had picks to make before the UCLA game, so let's get to those.
So you're going over.
I'm feeling bold. Give me that over.
I'll go under. I got to take an under here. I got 3 unders to take.
I'm going to do an under here.
All right. We start with the pre-week standings. I had a 4-game lead on you. I had 36-30 was my record. You were at 32-34. First over-under for you was over-under 238.5 UCLA rushing yards. I took the under on this. I was a little confident for some reason. I think I just thought the line was high, right? It ended up being under. It was 199. And in our little rundown, you put they're only under in 200 yards because of the kneel downs on the last plays of the game.
Yeah. The funny thing was I flirted with this line being 199.5, which would have just been
that would have been
the
chef's
worst.
kiss.
But USC had been giving up like I couldn't just go with 200 because it was going to be too easy for you to go with the over.
Sure.
But I should have just done it because obviously the under would have hit there. But yeah, they're only under 200. USC allowed 200 yards rushing to 5 opponents this season. It's kneel downs away from being 6.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to the next one. I said over under 2.25. Leatu Latu tackles for loss. He came into the game leading in tackles for loss. You took the over. It was under. It was under at 2. He had exactly 2. He was just barely under that. So that's a win for me. 2 in a row.
Yeah, that one's tough.
Yeah. Tough one for you. Your next over under was over under 299.5 Caleb Williams passing yards. I slammed the over on this one, and it was over. He was way over. He threw for 384 because Alicia SC had 387 total yards in this game. 384 were through the air.
It just goes to show what an incredible quarterback he is that he was able to throw for 384 yards in a game where his offensive line was absolutely eaten alive.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to my next over under, which was over under 2.5 USC sacks. You took the over. UCLA had been giving up or allowing 3+ in every game in Pac-12 play. So you took the over, and it was over. SC got their sack game finally on board. The Trojans got 3. They would have had 4, but the Bear Alexander sack was for 0 yards, which means it didn't count. It wasn't a sack.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah. Let's go to the next one. You said over under 1.5 Kyle Ford catches. I took the over on this. Alicia, it was under. He had 0 catches for Kyle Ford.
I think it's a disappointing season for Kyle Ford, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it was a disappointing season for Dorian Singer too. So.
No, absolutely.
Transfer portal doesn't always work going in or going out.
Yeah, 100%. My last one was over under 27.5 UCLA points. You hit the over confidently on this one, and you do get it correctly because they had 38 points. UCLA had, I think, 17 total against the Desert Schools. 38 against USC. Yeah. They had 14 in the first quarter. For the season, for the week, we each went 3-3, and for the season, I am now up to 39-33, and you are 35-37. So still a 4-game lead there. And this is when we tell people that we're horrible people. And we did all of our episode prep with the exception of running what you guys did on the over-under. I realized this at like 4:53 when we were about to start the episode. So I'm sorry. We're going to have to circle back to the over-under and let you know where the standings are as we get ready before SC's bowl game. So yeah, hopefully we'll get an update on GPAT and Vince and in
We're just
San Diego.
drawing out the suspense. We've got
Yeah.
a whole month plus until USC plays another football game.
Right.
And in between that, there's recruiting, but then bowl prep, all of this kind of stuff. We'll let you guys know in our next episode.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's get to the mailbag, shall we?
You've got mail.
All right, let's start with a email that we got from Andrew in Lisbon. Curious facts: 2012 and 2023, so many parallels. The biggest one, quote, "As I said, we still do have some unfinished business." Andrew in Lisbon.
I'm just saying that the term unfinished business is cursed. It's not good. It should be struck from all USC related things. And every time I see it now in every other context, I cringe. It just bad juju.
Yeah, bad juju.
That should be on the orientation packet when you come to USC as an athlete. If you're a transfer or a freshman or whatever, just do not use those words together.
So I look at this two ways. One, yes, I agree. The other side about it, I think we need to give grace for people who maybe weren't around. One of my favorite YouTube channels that I watch all the time now is called Box to Box Soccer. Like it's a soccer channel. And they're these young kids who make great like their stuff is literally great. Like it's genius, all these games and content bits that they put together. They were talking about an episode, something about like, we know that none of our listeners were old enough to watch David Beckham play. And like part of me died by hearing that sentence. But like I think that there's some validity to it when you talk about like when you talk about students that started at SC, a lot of them, we talk about this with recruits all the time. Like recruits don't watch college football for the most part. Like a lot of them don't watch college football. A lot of kids get to SC without the history that you and I had of watching SC football growing up.
Mm-hmm.
How many people were a fan of their childhood team if they were out of state and then they come to SC and then they become an SC grad and then are all into going to SC games or whatever. So you lack the context of the historical context of these things there.
You also have to be extremely online.
Yes, you have to be online, but also I think that you have to talk about like people who maybe work for the school that weren't around at the time, because there was the USC Football themselves put out a video ahead of the Notre Dame game talking about the Bush push, and they never mentioned fourth and 9. Like the clip just didn't include 4th and 9 at all. It included like the beginning of the drive, but not 4th and 9, and it was mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
And the more I thought about it, there's one of two answers. It's a young kid who wasn't alive, or probably was alive, but like was a kid when that game happened and doesn't remember, like didn't have the contextual understanding of the game, or it's somebody who edited the thing who, is new to working at SC or whatever and doesn't have the contextual knowledge of the thing either. And so I think we have to understand that those people exist. And so people are going to say things that are triggering like unfinished business, even though like you and I think a lot of the people listening to this podcast remember 2012. There's also a lot of people who don't, because they weren't here yet. Whether that be for young reasons or they're new to the program or whatever it is, right? Like
I get that, but it's still bad juju.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. Email from Tony and Denora, PA. Hi, Alicia and Michael. Hey, I'm not going to go over this season today, but I believe that what I think Lincoln must do to get this program back is in my previous emails. I watched a few podcasts on YouTube, and we are getting crushed. Most so-called experts don't believe he can get this program back to the top of college football. Boy, do I hope they are wrong. I'm done for now. You guys have a happy Thanksgiving. Fight on, Tony. There was a message in the chat I saw earlier too that like the national narrative, the national sentiment, is very anti-USC, anti-Lincoln Riley. You go on Reddit right now, like there's a USC post, like 20% of the posts are about SC and Lincoln Riley, and they're all like things that, the national sentiment is very much out on Lincoln Riley and SC.
Yeah, and that's because national sentiment loves a train wreck. That's why
Yeah.
everybody loved to pile on, and USC fans can't absolve themselves from this because USC fans were piling on Colorado as the Deion Sanders show sort of fell apart.
Texas
in the latter
A&M?
half of this
Yeah.
season. Texas A&M, yeah, they love a train wreck, and this was a
Right.
train wreck for USC this year. But ultimately, they don't matter. They don't matter. It's what USC turns around and does. And if Lincoln Riley goes out and hires a big name defensive coordinator, guess what? Everyone will sit back and completely ignore everything they said about how Lincoln Riley should just pack it up and leave, and talk about how
Right.
this is a big boy move from Lincoln Riley, and this is the thing that proves that he's finally taking defense seriously, even though the idea that he never took defense seriously is silly to me. He's a head coach. He understands what,
Yeah.
like what football is about, and he put his faith in the wrong defensive coordinator, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't take defense seriously when he went out and hired Ohio State's defensive coordinator the last time he had to hire a defensive coordinator. So
I think sports fandom and sports talk are they both have amnesia in a lot of ways. And then they also like it's there's amnesia and there's also remembering everything, right? Like because let's say that tomorrow, whoever the best possible person that you think should be the defensive coordinator hire, right? Like let's say it's Jim Leonard and SC hires them tomorrow. Go on a USC message board and every reply will be like gifts of like, of Jonah Hill in Moneyball doing the like thing, or like, people just losing their minds, like kaboom and super excited, and people are back on, like, because that's how quickly it happens, right? Like, people want a reason to root for things, and people want a reason to tear down things. Whether it's your team, whether it's somebody else's team, whether it's whatever, like, because those are things that are interesting. That's what we as humans are compelled to do, right? Like, we're compelled to talk shit about other people, and we're compelled to believe in things that we want to believe in. Like that's what our nature is to do. And so, yeah, absolutely. Like, there's not going to be a lot of buzz around USC that's positive right now. But if, things turn around, like if SC goes out and makes the right, DC hire, then, Kenny in the chat mentioned earlier that like look at Michigan in 2020, right? Michigan in 2020 was at the bottom of the barrel. They went 2-4 in the COVID season or whatever that was. People wanted to fire Jim Harbaugh, and then he started stealing signs. And so maybe this is the thing. Lincoln
that's what Lincoln needs to do.
Lincoln needs to, Connor Stallions is available. Maybe that's the game plan. I don't know. But things can change. Look, as quickly as things went bad for Lincoln Riley, they can go good, but they can continue to get bad too. Look at the Jimbo Fisher era Texas A&M, right? Like, it's alarming that all this stuff is negative, but like that's their challenge to turn it around, right?
Yeah,
it's absolutely your challenge to turn it around. Let's get to a voicemail we got from Scott in Memphis.
Guys, this is Scott from Memphis, and I'm going to give a dose of reality for next year. I'm looking at the 2024 schedule, and what I'm seeing is probably 7-5, 8-4, 8-4. And I'll be truthful with you. I don't want Oregon and Washington to be coming to the Big Ten. That's all done. But at the time when everybody was going, oh, we need to get more Pac-12 teams to come to the Big Ten. Oh, Oregon, I'm going to miss it. No, because we have to play at Washington, and that game probably would have been substituted if Washington hadn't gotten into the Big Ten by like Indiana. The Pac-12 is the best conference, and we're seeing it. And that's part of the reason why we're 7-5. Would have obviously 4 of the losses were Pac-12 teams, but the Big Ten is probably not far off, especially now that we got two of the other best Pac-12 teams in. And Oregon is not going anywhere. They're going to be good. Washington is going to be good. It's becoming more difficult next year, in my opinion, not easier. We better recruit, and we better get a machine and get the line straightened out, because it's going to get brutal. And by the end of next year, we'll be having different discussions. Anyway, fight on, and hopefully I'm wrong. I want to be completely wrong. Take care. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Thanks for the call, Scott. Yeah, I think that I wanted Oregon and Washington in the Big Ten for nostalgia friends. You want people you know. You want to be able to have somebody else on the West Coast and all those things. But at the same time, 100%, I think that it does change things, because look at where Oregon and Washington are right now. I think that we would both say that both of those programs are ahead of SC. Whether it's one step ahead or 3 steps ahead is whatever argument you want to have, but they are ahead of SC, and you go in the pecking order. It would be easier for SC if it was Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, then SC in the Big Ten. And now you slot in Oregon and Washington among those, and then you get to SC. And you're not even including like Iowa too, right? Like I do think that makes it more difficult in that sense.
Well, I mean, the schedule next year was going to be a lot easier without Washington and Oregon on the table. Now you add Washington and Oregon, and that looks tough. But at the same time, I'll add Oregon is losing Bo Nix. We don't know what they're going to be at quarterback. Washington is losing Michael Penix. We don't know what they're going to be at quarterback. All of these teams are uncertain to a point. LSU is going to have a new quarterback, by the way, as well. Michigan might have a new head coach. They might be penalized. They might be there's other things that are going on there.
Yeah.
When you look at the schedule, yes, I get why there's the instinct to sit there and say, well, that's a loss, that's a loss, that's a loss. Notre Dame also new quarterback. But I think it's too early to truly judge what this schedule looks like. I'm not looking ahead at this point and judging anything, because we looked ahead this season and didn't think that Arizona was going to be a ranked football team, and there they are. We looked ahead this year and thought that Cam Rising would be playing football for Utah, and he is not. We looked ahead this year and thought UCLA would be something drastically different than what they are, even if the record probably is exactly the same as what I would predicted. They're drastically different from the team that I expected them to be this year. So when you look ahead to the schedule in 2024, we don't know what Wisconsin will do further down the line with Fickell. We don't know if they're going to turn a corner. We don't know what Michigan is completely uncertain, completely and utterly uncertain. We don't know what Penn State's going to be. We don't know what Washington and Oregon and UCLA and Notre Dame are going to be. There's so many things that all of those teams need to sort out as well. Is Nebraska going to turn a corner under Matt Rule? We genuinely no idea, zero idea. Is USC going to turn a corner and transform the defense quickly? Is it going to take more time? I don't know. Nobody knows. So I don't like looking ahead at that schedule and saying, yeah, it's definitely 7-5. It might be 7-5. It might be 5-7. It might be 2-10. I don't, for all I know, it might be 10-2. I could not tell you right now.
Well, looking at next year's schedule, the difference with Oregon and Washington being a part of it, a part of the conference, the teams that were removed from next year's schedule are Northwestern, Purdue, Illinois, and Iowa. I would go out on a limb and say that SC would have been favored against at least 3 of those, if not 4. The schools that have been added to the schedule for next year are Nebraska, Rutgers, Washington, and Minnesota. I would say that SC is probably favored against two of those. Two of those probably. Maybe at least it could be up to three as it stands now. So like, yeah, I think that we can sit here and say that the schedule got harder with Oregon and Washington for sure. But to your point, a year ago, we wouldn't have said this about where SC was because things can change. Things can change up and down. You're thinking, we didn't foresee Arizona being an Oregon State win away in the Civil War away from going to the Pac-12 championship game, right? Things can change in a hurry, but as it stands right now, I think that next year is absolutely concerning. You
have to get the defense right.
You got to get the defense right. You got to figure out a way to manage all these close games because SC played so many close games. If they would have won all the close games, things would be much different. But they didn't win them all. They won some of them, but not all of them.
And that's the thing is USC's ability to navigate this schedule.
Yeah.
And there won't be national title expectations next year if anybody's being reasonable and fair.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to navigate the schedule competently, you have to get the defense right in terms of they have to be not the worst thing that we've ever seen in our lives.
Right.
And you got to have a quarterback who follows the standard Lincoln Riley trajectory of solid quarterback play, if nothing else. Because USC's offense, I mean, again, Caleb Williams covers up a lot of sins, but Lincoln Riley is a 40-point offense and has fielded a 40-point offense every year of his coaching tenure. If USC can stay up around a 40-point offense, this schedule looks a whole lot more manageable if you have a defense that's not a complete disaster.
I think of when I think of incredibly difficult schedules, next year's schedule is absolutely one of those that I consider. But then I look at like the list of, I look at other times that I felt that way about schedules. One of those was this year with Arizona. I think it was Michael Lev who covers Arizona for, was it the Daily Star in Tucson? After this, I think it was before the Stanford game, he said something along the lines of, and I wish I wish I had time to pull up this tweet, something along the lines of like, Arizona fans need to enjoy the Stanford week because they might not win again. Because after Stanford, Arizona played number 7 Washington, number 9 USC, number 19 Washington State, number 11 Oregon State, number 19 UCLA, at Colorado, and number 22 Utah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of 7 of those games are ranked opponents. It looked like Arizona was going to lose them all. They won 5 of those 7 games, and the 2 that they lost, they should have beaten SC, and they lost to Washington by a touchdown. A Washington team that is undefeated right now, ranked number 4 in the country. So they responded. And then I think of the other time that the craziest schedule I've ever seen was Notre Dame 2012. Notre Dame goes on the road at Michigan State. They host Michigan. They play Miami, Stanford, BYU, at Oklahoma, at SC. They went 12-0. So I'm not saying SC is going to do that next year. What I'm saying is, I think so many times you end up thinking that something is going to be the way it is the year before.
I mean, just think
or the time before, and it ends up not being what you think.
Think about 2016. None of the teams that we thought would be great that season. Well, the front Alabama and Stanford certainly, but the back end, we looked at the final month of that schedule and said, "Oh my gosh,
we said that the schedule was a reverse hamburger."
Yeah, and USC ended up playing an Oregon team that was down, a UCLA team that was down, a Notre Dame team that was down, and a Washington team that was highly ranked, but also a Washington team that was
Washington went to the playoff.
A bit of a paper tiger in the playoff, though.
They went to the playoff.
They did.
They were 11-1 in the regular season. They went to the playoff, but the rest of November, we thought Oregon was going to be good, and they were 4-8. We thought UCLA was going to be good, and they were 4-8. We thought Notre Dame was going to be good, and they were 4-8. Things can change. I'm not saying that they're going to.
Colorado would be terrible, and they were quite.
They were good that year. Yeah.
Again, that's all I'm saying. I'm not making a judgment one way or another. I'm leaving open all possibilities. Yes, it might be bad, but I also want people to consider the idea too that it might also be a whole lot easier than you expected, because literally we don't know.
Yeah. Let's get to the chat in the old YouTubes. Tim in the chat says, Michael, I must be losing my mind because you're the third person I respect that has said that USC should have lost the Arizona game. Didn't USC miss a chip shot field goal at the end of the game? Yeah, they did. I genuinely think that SC and Arizona both feel like they should have won that game, both in regulation and in overtime, at different spots. I think Arizona should have won that game. I think SC should have won that game in regulation. Neither. It should not have gotten to triple overtime like it did. Arizona should have gone for a 2-point conversion at the end of a real overtime. There were, plenty of instances. I think both teams had a million chances in that game, and that's mostly when I say that Arizona should have won that game.
See, I think that's where you use should, where I would say could.
Sure,
but that's
sure, but should I say that SC should have lost? Would that have been better?
Could have lost. USC could have lost that game easily.
Certainly could have lost, but I also think that SC should have won that game 31-28, but they didn't. Yeah, and Arizona, should have gotten more out of that game, but they didn't. Yeah, but both teams, I think, look back at that game and wish that it finished differently than it did. I know that SC won the game, obviously, but SC could have won it in a way where it wasn't nearly as sloppy and as it was. And Arizona could have won. They could have not blown a 17-0 lead also. Yeah. All right, let's go to other questions in the chats. We did get an earlier super chat from Fighting on MC. We missed this.
Cheers.
Fight on, you both are appreciated. You're appreciated too. We appreciate you. Alex says, how much did the defense improve without Alex Grinch, if any? I don't think it did.
I don't think we expected it to improve.
I don't think it did.
The defense was. I think the defense seemed to me to try to keep things in front of it a little bit more after Alex Grinch, but the defense was
How
just.
Can you say that against the Oregon game, though?
I mean, fair, but like a lot of the Oregon game was things where guys were not tackling and
no, what
they
we
were in front of it.
What we saw the last 2 weeks were the same thing that we saw.
Yeah.
All season. I think
you don't fix your defense by firing your defensive coordinator. That's the one thing. Like, people who want to get on Lincoln Riley, he should have fired the defensive coordinator sooner, and all of this kind. He should have fired him after the Utah game or the Notre Dame game or whatever it was. I get that sentiment, but also
the only correct answer is the Cotton Bowl.
Lincoln Riley was correct to probably look at it and say, there is no point in firing my defensive coordinator until the end of the season, because your defense is not going to get better with the same staff that you had in place, with guys who probably aren't capable of turning it around in the span of a week. It just,
the way
it goes.
But yeah, which is why
you should have fired him after the Cotton Bowl.
And the Cotton Bowl. Yeah.
That's your window to fire him. And if you didn't do that, then you're stuck.
Yeah. Fighting on MC says, is there a chance that Taylor Mays is kept since he just got a field assistant position? I mean, sure. I think that there's a chance that anybody could stay or leave at this point.
Certainly of the analysts and all of that, but his connection to USC is probably his best argument to get retained with a new staff. But I also I don't know. I don't know that that's
yeah.
That's something that necessarily is we can predict, Because
I
does
think
he want to stay also?
Whoever the new defensive coordinator is should make all the hires. If that includes Taylor Mays, then it includes Taylor Mays.
Well,
if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Taylor Mays should not be a full-time assistant at USC. In my opinion, at this point.
I think ideally you'd want somebody who is proven and done things at every level. So yes.
If Taylor Mays wants to stay on as an analyst or as a grad assistant, whatever, I'm all on board.
At the same point, if you end up getting a defensive coach who, a defensive coordinator who, say their purview is the safeties, like that's their niche is the safeties, and then you had Taylor Mays, and he helped you along, and this was your ability to like develop him as a coach, that would be a different scenario. But again, what is it going to be the best for whoever this defensive coordinator is? Because that's what it's going to come down to. Let's go to a voicemail we got from Dan in Valley Village.
Hey, Raina Troy, it's Dan from Valley Village. I wanted to call and thank you guys. You guys have been so rad this season and have been therapists for all of us. Dare I say, I speak for the group in saying that. And specifically for myself, when I am beyond frustrated or beyond confused, and you guys have lended a helping hand and clarified where I fail to put words to my thoughts. And I just wanted to take a second to tell you that, because at the end of this CarCast, I could sense that you guys were just toast, either with the fact that you guys have done an enormous amount of work, but also just with the season. And I just want to say thank you. And also highlight for the rest of the fan base that we can only do the one thing that my kid, my 3-year-old, summed up perfectly right here.
Fire, routine, excellent, victory, I lost my ears, stop you, I'll be so sick,
Anyway, fight on, guys. Love you.
Oh, that was adorable.
That was the best, and Jesse agrees. Clearly, Jesse agrees. Thanks for everything, Dan. We appreciate the call and the song. The song was great. I think we're burnt out. I think everyone's burnt out, right? Like I think this was just like 2012. You got to the end of the season, you're like, I need the season to be over. I think everybody. I'm fried talking about it. I know that. I think you guys are too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very done for several weeks now, in terms of just energy that I have to put in. Saturday I was legitimately also like sick. I was
you're under the weather all weekend.
I was my sports mood and my just body failing me entirely were all wound together. But I appreciate the sentiment that I'm glad that we provide that service. I always say this to people, that I seek out podcasts to help me process my other sports teams, my entertainment loves like TV shows and stuff like that. I seek out podcasts to help me process, to help me feel that sense of community and analysis and passion and all that kind of stuff. So I love that we can be that for you guys when it comes to USC. It's literally what makes this podcast wonderful, and it's the kind of thing that makes me willing to jump on a CarCast on a Saturday when I've already taken a sick day from work, and I am literally just on my last leg, and still be willing to say no. I can't not do the podcast, because the podcast is the thing that brings me joy and brings me fulfillment. So I appreciate. Thank you for calling in and sharing that.
Yeah, Absolutely. We do this for you guys. Michelle says, will a good DC want to go to USC with Riley on the hot seat? Takes a minimum 2 years to fix a Grinch defense, and not much coming in on D this recruiting class. I think a good DC especially I think a defensive coordinator wants to be backed by an offense that can score points, right? Like you want the run support, and that's something that we know that SC can provide, right?
Yes, I think many defensive coordinators will look at USC as an opportunity to field the defense when you know your offense is actually going to score points. You look around the country, there are teams that have good defenses that cannot count on their offense to put up enough points to give them a chance to win. What I will say is my hot take is this: Lincoln Riley is not on the hot seat, and any defensive coordinator that is interested in this job can look at one thing. Lincoln Riley reportedly signed a 10-year contract worth upwards of $100 million. USC does not have oil barons who are going to bail out that contract. So while USC, while after year 4 or maybe year 5, USC might be in a position to say, no, we've given up. We're done with the Lincoln Riley era. I do not think that USC is in a position to move on from Lincoln Riley anytime soon unless somebody shells out a ridiculous amount of money for it. So I don't think that should scare off any defensive coordinator at all. If USC is serious about about competing for the names that are on the table right now suggest that USC is serious about competing for defensive coordinators.
Yeah.
Salary wise, if USC is willing to pay top dollar for a defensive coordinator, that will matter more than the sensation that Lincoln Riley is somehow on the hot seat when USC would have to pay a buyout that's on par with what Jimbo had, which I can already tell you right now, it does just mean more in the SEC. The Texas A&M buyout is ridiculous, and I don't think USC would pay something like that.
Yeah, I understand the sentiment of Lincoln Riley's on the proverbial hot seat nationally, where people are doubting his ability to turn things around. That national perspective is very much out on Lincoln Riley right now. I get that. I don't know that a coach. I think that there would be some concern, but I think the concern would be more so if this was year 4, 5, where he was constantly weathering the storm and gone through a couple of defensive coordinators or something like that. Like I think that if you're this great defensive coordinator, I think you have the arrogance to sit there and think, I can fix this. I can be the one who comes in and, fix this mess. And you go in there and you do it. It's sort of the same thing with recruiting, right? Like, yes, I think recruiting is better when you have a great situation and all those things. At the same time, you can also pitch the idea that come in right now and this is your opportunity to do things. So different people are going to see the situation differently. There will be people interested. There will be people that this turns away. Absolutely. I think that the level of names that people have talked about so far, when there was the tweet from Jason Shear about Jim Leonard and Jeff Collins, like those are not, those are not average Joes in terms of defensive coordinators. So it's not like the only pickings that you have are bad ones because of this proverbial hot seat kind of stuff. So. Yeah. Last question before we wrap this thing up. Cameron, Frisco, Texas says, what are your thoughts on the Las Vegas Grand Prix that happened on Saturday night? Alicia, you did not watch it. You weren't feeling well.
I watched the first 3 laps, maybe, if that. I watched until there was a safety car called or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I did not make it any further. I dragged myself to bed and I said, no, Alicia, just go to sleep. And then I slept. So,
I think
speak on it.
the bar was low, and it not only answered the bell to where the bar was, it was one of the best races of the year, legitimately. And I think that is a big testament to volatility, and so much of that has to do with like the tires were weird. There was that created some sort of a wrinkle of chaos. There was way more racing, I thought, than there was going to be. So yeah, I thought it was good. Max wins the race, but he had to fight for it. It wasn't a race in which he just ran away in the front and never looked back. He had to fight for this thing. He had to overtake for the win. So I think that's what you want to see. It was a good race.
Yeah, of course it was a good race because
you didn't watch it.
I couldn't stay up to watch it.
Yeah. All right, we will be back next week. That's it. That's it for us this week. We holiday weekend's coming up. Long holiday week. I am going on vacation with like a little boys trip. So we'll be back next week. What are we looking at? Wednesday next week? Next Wednesday? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll be back
We'll be back next Wednesday. If stuff breaks between now and then, we'll see sort of how that shakes out and whether or not we can throw something together. But yeah, we'll have a planned episode on next Wednesday.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Until next time, we will see ya. See ya.
See ya. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving sucks. Let's be honest. It's the worst holiday there is.
I love it.
It's a terrible holiday.
I'm excited.
No. See ya. Bye.